Well, good morning. It's a beautiful Saturday morning and it's another New Day Saturday edition. I'm Stephen Enti. Now, this week has been quite an eventful week. President Mahama, in the lead up to the 2016 general elections, said training allowances would not be restored, even if it will cost him the elections. Well, perhaps that cost him the elections, and the current president made sure that it was one of his fulfilled promises in the first 10 months in office. Perhaps the fun that came with it, the t-shirts, seminars, party communicators, fanfare and anticipation of the announcement is actually sums up how the party feels in readiness for the 2020 elections, obviously being an achievement in its among its promises. Now, it is also reported that some 500 students of the various agric training colleges across the country picketed at the offices of the Ministry of Agriculture over the failure of governments to provide their allowances as well. So bear in mind that each student is receiving 400 cedis, and there are about 58,000 students that will benefit. The NDC government's argument for withdrawing the allowances was to increase enrollment and eventually meet the shortage of these professionals who are in critical need. But will the restoration of the allowances mean lower enrollments? Is this a zero-sum game? These are some of the things that we'll be discussing. Now, there is the atomic junction gas explosion, unfortunate gas explosion leading to the death of 7 people and over 300 people sustaining various degrees of injuries. Now, the worrying trend of gas explosions necessitated drastic actions, with the president issuing fresh directives aimed at more like bringing an end to this trend. Among the things the president actually said was one, immediate cessation, inspection of all gas stations and vigorous enforcement of existing safety regulations, review of current licensing regimes, and most importantly, the implementation of the cylinder recirculation module, which LPG companies have protested against for so long. So the president is also asking for a review of the safety protocols along the entire value chain. So critical question is that, are these the measures that are necessary to bring an end to this what is appearing to be a worrying trend? Or would you say these measures are just reactionary and needless? Are they the actions that needed to have been taken as far back as June 3rd, when the flood fire disaster took place at the Kwame Nkrumah Circle? We'll be discussing all of that. And Otumfuo was caught up this week in an allegation of money laundering for depositing some £350,000 sterling into his UK-based account for onward transfer to a location in New Jersey in the United States of America. Critically, this has been greeted with deafening silence from Malaysia. We would have expected that we'll get a reaction, but no reaction is coming. And there are those supporters of the Asantehene who say that this is just unnecessary tarnishing of his image. Is this an indication that we are softening the rules to allow anything happen in the banking industry here in Ghana, considering that Otumfuo is said to have withdrawn that money from Ghana without raising any concerns at all? So we will do these discussions and a lot more when we return from the break. I'll introduce my guest for today. This is New Day, and remember, we're streaming live on our Facebook page and also on 3news.com. You can join us via WhatsApp line 0500 60 70 70, and if you're active on our social media pages, Facebook and Twitter, you can send us tweets and put your comments on our Facebook pages, News on TV3. We'll be right back. Welcome back to New Day. This morning I have with me to my very extreme left Mustafa Salem, who is the Deputy Youth Organizer of the MPP, and then I also have Professor Clement Jidonu, who is the president of the Accra Institute of Technology. Joining us also is Mr. Kwame Jantua. He's a member of the CPP. He's a lawyer, legal practitioner. And then also have Murtala Mohammed, former MP for Nantong, and also former Deputy Minister of Trade, joining us this morning. Gentlemen, great to have you.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning.
So I'll start with the very, very obvious one, the gas explosion at Atomic Junction. 7 people died, over 300 people injured, sustained various degrees of injuries. And then the president, after a cabinet meeting on the 12th, issued fresh directives. There are those who say that the directives are reactionary. I mean, the president, among other things, directed that from henceforth the cylinder recirculation module of LPG distribution be implemented. And that means, this actually means that the LPG bottling plants will be sited away from congested commercial and population centers. And according to the statement, will procure, brand, maintain, and fill empty cylinders to be distributed through retail outlets, and then low-risk stations will be designated for supply of gas to vehicles. Let me start with you, Mr. Mustafa Salem. This is an action which I'm sure many people would say came at the right time, considering that the trend of gas explosions have been with us for some time. Is becoming worrying. We know that action needs to be taken. Would you say that the directives from the presidency will more like put an end to this, and it's in the right direction?
First of all, good morning to your very cherished viewers, and then good morning to the panel here. I sincerely believe that after the scourge of explosions in the last 3 years, if we do not stem the tide, certainly we will be bound for doom if we allow this to continue. That is why it is commendable that government within days has reacted to the very last one that occurred on the 7th of October, which saw the death of 7 Ghanaians and the injury of 132. Some are still in the hospital receiving medical treatment, some have been discharged. If you look at the sequence to the disaster, it is one that is worrying, that we are not able as a country to regulate the activities relative to these things. And if we continue this way, the disaster that we witness probably will be more than we have seen. That is why Cabinet thought it wise that it deliberates on it and has come out clearly and very firmly on steps that would ensure that these things do not continue. Mind you, in the last 3 years alone, there has been 8 major gas explosions in this country. And that tells us that something is certainly wrong within the downstream industry. And if we do not stem it now, I'm sure that we all cannot tell where the next one would happen where.
So really, the impression we get from you is that this is a commendable action from
it's
your
very
government.
commendable if you look at the steps that have been taken, the recommendations that all high-risk stations are closed down immediately. Also,
and there are those who say
regime.
this is very reactionary. I mean,
indeed,
if you need to put in place
that is why,
health and safety measures,
that is
you
why,
don't close down.
Yes, that is why absolutely
a
why government needs to be commended. Like this government is 10 months old and has taken these steps already. In the last 3 years, 8 has happened. We didn't see any action. But we have come and we have said, no, we cannot continue like this. Let's ensure that this is stopped. All high-risk stations are closed down. We should look at the licensing regime, how people get licenses to just operate. And a lot of the supervision and so on must be enforced to ensure that the laws are applied to the letter, and that people must comply with the regulations, you know, therein in the industry, so that people are safe and we do not see the deaths that we see when these, you know, accidents occur, and the injury, the cost involved and everything. So it is commendable that we have even reacted this much to ensure that we do not see a repeat of it. The government has done well. We now would want to see that the recommendations are followed to the letter. Yesterday, I have a statement from MPA already, ensuring that, you know, the cabinet decisions are enforced.
Cessation of all construction works,
of all construction, you know, of this gas station. Yes, these are the things that we need to be doing in this country. When, you see, a lot of harm has been done, especially relative to siting of these fuel stations and gas stations, right? We should now begin to be cleaning the system to ensure that where high-risk ones are, we begin to pull them off. The one that happened at the Atomic Junction was certainly scary, and we are only but grateful that the number of casualties was controlled, because if at the peak of it,
the University
people
of Ghana
were not
was nearby,
yes,
Presbyterian Boys Secondary School, UPSA,
yes,
Theological, Ghana
that would have been a massive disaster. The second one took over 150 lives. The one we saw on June 3rd took over 150 lives. If this had happened at a certain time, I'm sure the numbers would have been recorded
much worse,
or would have been much more worse than we have seen. That is
yeah,
why we as a country, we have to be firm on these things. We have to apply the laws in this country. Rules must be followed. We have taken for granted too long our own regulations, and it is time that we allow the laws to bite. If people are found culpable, they should be made to dance to the tune of the law.
Right.
If people cannot comply, then these stations are shut down, so that Ghanaians can feel safe wherever they are to do their business without a fear of, you know, being bent to death, you know, coming out to do your risk business.
Right. Let me shift to Mr. Kwamjanto. I know that you're an energy person. You understand these things a lot more than perhaps most of us. But the directives from the presidency, well, I mean, they are commendable because it came timely. But would you say the details of it, stopping cessation of construction of new gas stations and fuel stations, starting a training regime for staff of OMCs, among a host of things that the president directed, including the most important one is the implementation of the cylinder recirculation module, which the LPG gas companies have been protesting against. So I need to hear your view on the measures government is putting in place to address these explosions.
Stephen, thank you. Good morning to my fellow panelists, and good morning to viewers and listeners of this program. Stephen, is it government's responsibility to put in these measures? Is it the president's responsibility to put these measures in?
Perhaps the institutions have not been working.
It's the responsibility of the regulator. It's not the president's responsibility to do what he's done. Commendable as it is not his responsibility. Responsibility of the regulator. And it has to be a continuous, ongoing thing. How many times a year does EPA monitor these stations? Twice a year. They monitor stations twice a year.
Which is woefully inadequate.
Very inadequate. You're dealing with a highly inflammable substance. Highly inflammable substance. We know from all accounts that at the time of the discharge, the driver who was discharging it
had his engine on.
Apart from having his engine on, he realized it was leaking. The fatalities would have been worse if he hadn't warned people around there that there was a gas leak. And how did he try to stop it? Instead of closing the valve, he tried to use what? I understand he tried to use a dust or something to cover it up. And now gas is inflammable. And if you see how it started in the air because the gas had accumulated in the air. I don't think it's the president's responsibility to do what he's done. It's the regulator and those who are in charge to do what they have to do. In terms of the system, I think that we haven't learned from the 8th and the 3rd June disaster that had happened. We haven't learned from it. Because if we had learned from it, we still wouldn't have gas stations next door to filling stations. We need to put a system.
So that's a no-no?
It's a no-no for me. We need to put a system
regardless
in place.
of safety standards that are in place at both stations.
Hasn't it happened? We've had 8 with safety standards in place. We've had 8 with safety standards in place. For me, we should take the system that we use to sell pure water, if I'll call it pure water, the ones in the bottles. How do they do it? They either deliver to your house or you tend to take your bottles to their depots and they take it to their holding places and they take it to their depots to fill and come and pick it up. We need a system where every Ghanaian home should have 2 cylinders. They take one to the depot, to the holding area. The holding area then takes it to the filling station, which is outside on the perimeters of the cities. And then you come and pick up.
But there are those who argue that citing these depots outside with population explosion and expansion, people development is catching up, and that many of these current fuel stations and gas depots were, when they were sited, far away, and the human growth caught up with it.
You talk about human growth, you talk about development. Are we spatially planning our cities?
So it boils down to planning.
It boils down to planning. Boils down. Failing to plan is, what do they call? Planning to fail is it planning to fail or failing to plan?
It's planning
it's
to
planning to fail. That is where it starts from. You know you have population expand. You know you have people coming in from the rural areas. You know rural-urban drift is happening. So you plan. Certain areas, yes, you have stations there. Certain areas you don't have. Look, it's ironic that in this country, I don't think we've had petrol stations exploding. I haven't heard it. I don't know whether any of my panelists have heard it. That actual petrol stations have exploded. I haven't heard it. And so I ask myself the question.
Is it because there are more robust safety regimes at these petrol stations?
I think even the owners of the petrol stations and where they even buy their petrol from, there's a regime of safety in there. And so we've been able to control anything. And the equipment that they use, they are modern equipment. So we've been able to stem any explosions. But in general, Ghanaians, are we not lawless? Do we abide by laws in terms of safety? How many times in TV3 here do you have fire drills? Tell me, how many times? Flagstaff have, how many times do they have fire drills? People go and buy petrol and their engines are on. Is it safe? It's not safe. Safety is the last thing on our minds. But you know, accidents just don't happen. They are caused. And we are the cause of most of the accidents that happen. How many lives were lost? This journalist from in the Net2.
May his soul rest in peace.
May his soul rest in peace. He was standing on the bridge trying to get a shot and report. What happened?
He was blown off.
He was blown off. And the people in the vicinity who were even running away, when they tell you the heat, only the heat alone that they felt on their body, it's a good what do you call it, thought to know how hell would be like. This was hell on earth. This was hell on earth. And we should be very, very, you know, right now, one of the things that even frighten me are the cylinders we have in our houses that feed our cookers. You know, most people go and change their cylinder, and the small rubber in there, they hardly change it. And we have cylinders sited in our kitchens. This is where EPA should go round every house and advise that you need to put your cylinders outside your house. Bore a hole through the wall, put the flex through, and it should be outside the house. Safety is something we take for granted in this country. Motorbikes, a similar thing. Wear helmet, you won't wear. Seat belt, small things. Look, when you sit in a car and you're not wearing your seat belt and a car hits you from the back, you can break your neck easily. With your seat belt, you're safe. We don't look at those things. And so we have to wait for the president to come and tell us that this is the line we have to follow. What are the institutions there for?
So this should be seen as failure on the part of the institutions.
Failure
really.
On the part of everybody, not only the institutions.
Commendable that
but safety is key in everything we do. Safety is key in our driving, in our eating, in everything we do. Look, go to our chop bars and look at the surroundings that they cook the food in.
Terrible.
Terrible. Is it not a hazard? Is it not safety? Don't people go and eat there? Do we care? Who asked the question?
Over the weekend, I went to the Kassoa New Market. I was amazed with the deterioration of sanitation in the vicinity. It was unbelievable. But that to the point. Let me move to Professor Jidonu. Prof, like Mr. Jantua is saying, this boils down to our own institutional failures, failure on our part as citizens who are not law-abiding. I mean, we just walk around and do things anyhow, throw rubbish about. This is just the attitude which is surfacing and becoming problematic for us. Do you get the impression that the measures in place are good enough, or you think that beyond the rhetoric, there should be more?
Yeah, Stephen, good morning. Good morning to colleagues. And good morning to your cherished viewers. Stephen, I think what happened the other day was not an accident.
It wasn't?
No, it wasn't. It was pure negligence. Somebody not doing the right thing.
Yes.
It's not an accident happened is something you don't know, and then it happened by accident. That's why you use the word accident. Somebody was doing the wrong thing, and that somebody knows the right thing but decided to do the wrong thing. It's pure negligence. Now you ask whether these rules, these new measures that the president put in place will may bring about any change. Well, the president's action, which one expects, because something like that couldn't have happened and then the president would not do anything about it. So we expect the president and his team will come together and say a few things. Now, I don't think these rules, as Mr. Jantua said, the rules have been there. They have been there. For example, liquefied gas, implementation model, recycling, is that correct model?
Yes.
He said we must implement it, which means they have been there already. Somebody have not been implementing them. Look at some of the things that the president said. He said facilities intended for gas and petroleum stations must be what? Construction of facilities intended for use for gas and petroleum retail station must be stopped with immediate effect. Supposing we stop that, will it actually stop what happened the other day from happening if people are still negligent? No. We can stop the construction, but you may not stop it if people don't follow the rules, and then the implementation agency, the regulatory agency, does not enforce them. That's the first thing. The one, two, they said that they will no more construct new stations, new gas stations in the country. Well, that may be good, but how long can we sustain that kind of policy? The population is increasing. We must start these gas stations, stopping them with immediate effect. Are we saying that tomorrow we are going to come back to it again and say, okay, now that we've stopped it, we are now going to resume it? Because the population is going to increase. Now, when you look at a lot of these gas stations, do you know the powers behind it? The people who are constructed it, these are not ordinary Ghanaians.
Of them are politicians.
Well, I don't want to use the word politicians.
I mean, there have been
there are people who are powers. Some of them have powers in this country. That they can even overrule the NPA on this starting of these gas stations. A number of them have a couple of gas stations. That is a fact.
But the era of impunity is gone.
You see, so the point I'm making is that
just 10 months.
Just
10 months.
Yes.
This is not a president.
You are just 10 months.
Allow impunity.
Well, it's, the president can do all he want to do.
But the impunity has been with us for a long time.
You see,
the problem didn't start today.
People around him.
Yes, you see, as I said, the president can say, stop building these gas stations. We will stop. But if we stop building those gas stations, we couldn't have stopped what happened the other day, because that guy, the guy who was what? Discharging the gas. Is that correct?
Yes.
He messed up.
Yes.
He messed up. The rules is very clear.
Perhaps he didn't know what to do.
Oh, well, he's not supposed to do that job.
Not supposed to discharge after 5 p.m.
Yes.
He discharged at 5 p.m.
The rule is there. So stop construction of gas stations will not have stopped what happened the other day. It's just we don't follow rules. We say, this will do. Okay? So I think we are not the only nation in this world who have gas stations. We're not. Even in Africa, I'm sure a lot of countries do have that.
Oh, yes.
How come that we have the highest preponderance of what? Gas explosions. We are becoming known as a nation of what? Gas explosions.
And a lot of African countries have taken our model.
Very good.
Yeah.
But are they also having a lot of gas explosions? Very good. So sometimes it's following the rules.
Yeah, following the rules.
We are not following. So you can make as many rules, you can put forward new directive from the presidency, but if the people are not following the rules and are not punished for not following the rules, this will continue. This thing that happened, has anybody been punished?
Not yet.
Investigations are still ongoing.
Very good. We will see. We will see. We are still here. We will see whether somebody will be punished at the end of the day. NPA, their PRO said, well, you wait. We are going to do some magic soon. We've closed down 21 already. We are going around. We're going to close more. Is that the right approach? He said, don't worry. We are new.
But Prof, is that the right approach?
Well, the point I'm saying is that a lot of the rules that have been flouted, that's why we have this problem.
Are in existence already.
They are in existence already. They have not been enforced. They have not been implemented. That is what we're having. You don't throw more rules on the table if the ones that are there, you're not implementing them. For me, yes, the president can go ahead and pass those directives, see these officers that they follow it and implement it. But if people are negligent, they don't follow the rules, we'll continue to have this kind of this thing. I want to emphasize, we are not the only country in the world which have these gas stations. A lot of people, a lot of countries do have. We are not the one who invented these gases anyway. So how come they are not exploiting themselves all over the place? It's the way we do our things. So I will not blame government, okay? I may not even blame totally the NPA, okay? Probably the petrol station operators and the people who work for them are negligent. As we talk now, I'm sure there's somebody somewhere at the gas station flouting the rules.
And so there's nobody there to check it.
Nobody's going to check it. I even wonder whether some of these people have been trained for this kind of job.
Which is why the president is directing that there should be training for staff.
Well, he will say that whether the people will follow it.
Exactly.
Would they be given certification?
Who's enforcing
Now,
it?
let's go to the NPA. Did you give people certifications? Say the people who handle the gas, did you give them certification? You are qualified. If you flout it, we will withdraw your certification. Now, look at the petrol station owner. He's a businessman sitting in a house somewhere. some young girls and boys are running the station. And 1 hour supervision they have. For me, those are the fundamental things. The president's intervention is a good one, but I'm not very hopeful.
So if we get the drift, no matter what reviews are done, the key issue is implementation of existing rules. Otherwise, we'll get nowhere.
It's not only implementation, it's enforcement. You punish. You withdraw license.
You withdraw certification.
Yes. You mess around, withdraw a license. You train your workers, make sure they follow the rules, don't flout the rules. Enforcement. That is what we lack in this country.
Murtala Mohammed.
Well, let me say good morning to your cherished viewers and my senior colleagues and my kid brother. I was telling the gentleman that there is someone here. I'm also older than. So today I'm not the youngest one on this program. And of course, the good people of Nantong constituency. I think that I thought that we were going to look at it dispassionately, because this is a tragedy that has befallen us as a people. I didn't get the drift, my brother.
You think we're looking at it through political lenses?
No, he in his usual style, the impunity, there's no longer, we have impunity even at the seat of the presidency, but I won't even go into that. I think that
which kind of impunity are you referring to?
He knows the impunity. He knows the kind of allegations of corruption against individuals at the seat of the president. He knows that we still cannot trace those who bought the 5% of the dubious 2.25% bond. He knows that the minister of, we can't go there. But the point I'm just making is that please don't talk. No, so you shouldn't.
I asked a critical question.
Exactly,
so
he
that
asked
we
the question.
Pinpoint
I didn't want you see
these
the idea of impunity.
We can't just let something fly.
Exactly, we have a national tragedy, and I thought that the least we could do was to do politicking with it. If you listen to everybody, I thought he would have even avoided and resisted the temptation to talk about the fact that the impunity is no longer. Well, we have had these experiences in this country.
It's fair to make reference to the impunity.
We have had these experiences in this country, not today. We have had these experiences in all the political parties, at least the two political parties that have had the opportunity to govern this country.
NDC
and MPP. So if I begin to say that because we experienced this under MPP, it means that there was impunity. I really don't think that I'll be doing justice to the issue, and I'll be more or less disregarding the sensibilities of families who have lost loved ones and people who are still in the hospital, indeed seeking our prayers and seriously needing treatment so that they can also live a normal life like we live. And that's why I thought that we could have avoided that. But I'm not going into that. Let me say that there are protocols governing the setting up of the stations. The protocols ought to be adhered to. There are interagency responsibility and even the licensing and construction of either gas or petrol or fuel stations
are regulated.
Those interagency responsibilities are responsibilities that I think that we haven't adhered to. The extent to which those interagencies the interagency responsibilities and the agencies responsible in ensuring that people who want to have this license, people who want to set or put up such facilities adhere to. You have the Metropolitan, Municipal and District Assemblies who have a role to play. You have the NPA that has a role to play. You have the EPA that has a role to play. You have the Ghana Standard Authority agency that has a role to play, and many other agencies, and in fact including the Ministry of Energy. They all have a responsibility. How are people given license? Now, after the license are secured, what has been the monitoring, the supervision to ensure that the constructions of such stations are done mindful of the safety measures? I said on other platforms that I have seen fuel stations in residential homes. In fact, in Belgium, I saw a fuel station in a residential home. This is the building, people are there, and the station is down there. And people come there to buy fuel. The question then is, why is it that they don't experience what we experience here? And I think that almost everybody asks that question. It has to do with the safety measures. Our ability to adhere to those strict safety measures. Now the question Comrade Gentwa asked had to do with the fact that, why is it that we have never had an explosion of fuel stations? And that any time we have had this, I am not too sure. Yeah. But as far as I'm concerned, I haven't heard any. Even the incident we had at Circle, it wasn't just the explosion. It was the electrocuting, if you like, because there was a spillage of the fuel and water and many other things which got fire. I'm saying that it has to do with strict adherence to safety standards. Now, if you look at the point in case, those protocols ought to be adhered to. The drivers of such tankers are not just ordinary drivers. They ought to be taken through training. This statement that is issued demanding that they should be trained, in fact, is part of the regulations. They ought to be trained. If you like, the driver mates, those who assist the drivers, ought to also go through training. Well. The attendants, the fuel attendants and guard attendants at the stations ought to have some level of training. There should be supervisors in the discharge of this. Loading and discharge them, those protocols ought to be adhered to. To what extent have they been trained? Now, what we experience in this country is that the driver, the person bought the tanker, he's been able to have his tanker registered. Perhaps the driver is not taken through the training. The driver mates do not go through the training. The fuel and gas attendants do not go through the training. And even in cases where they undergo the training, the manager of the gas station decides at will that I do not want to work with this person again because of the shape of his head. Get off. I have a niece or a nephew, I want to come and work in there. The niece and the nephew, who certainly has not gotten the training that the previous person who was sacked may have acquired. Then the person comes and then the person is operating it. I guess it has been put to rest that this thing was not as a result of a Chinchinga seller.
Yes.
As a lazy journalistic work created the impression that it was as a result of a Chinchinga seller. Yet the Chinchinga seller's table was intact. Yet metallic objects were burnt to ashes. I think that the point we need to look at has to do with how we adhere to those protocols. Now, if you look at the statement that is issued, everybody comments it. But we need to ask some critical questions about the statement that was issued by the presidency with regards to the strict adherence. I won't go to the issue which my brother raised, that look, it is not the responsibility of the president, it is the responsibility of the regulator. But in cases where the regulator seemed not to be doing its work, of course, this is just an impetus.
To a shame.
I'm saying that perhaps this is just an impetus that the regulator ought to be doing its work. But if you say that people who are constructing new gas and fuel stations should stop, does it make sense? Now, if those people who are constructing those stations are constructing them mindful of the strict adherence to the standards and regulations governing the construction of them, why would you ask them to stop? Now, the other argument that they should be sited somewhere far, I really don't think that would be the solution. We need to ensure that the already existing safety measures are adhered to. It doesn't matter where they are sited. And that is why I have said that we have seen in many countries, in fact, in Europe and in America, gas is provided to people's homes.
Yes, direct. Yes,
Direct. They don't experience that. It has to do with the education. It has to do with safety measures. It has to do with the strict adherence. Now, there is the responsibility also for supervision and monitoring. And the supervision, the responsibility to do that is the NPA and the Ghana Standard Authority. Now, how regular, how frequent do they do this monitoring? And when they do such monitoring and realized that there are some fuel and gas stations who are violating those regulations governing their operation, what measures, punitive, have they taken against those operators? These are a myriad of questions that we need to be asking. So we have such. Now, you have another question that ought to be asked. Now, those who are in hospital struggling, some of them, their lives are going to change completely. Some will come out deformed. And as a result of that, they may lose friends and perhaps lose loved ones. Because we have instances where people are affected and perhaps it even created to the breakages of their marriages and others. Have we had psychologists, clinical psychologists, who take these people through?
So you think the statement should have gone further?
Exactly.
Moved away from the mechanics of the problem
to the psychological issue and socio-economic issues. Now, if you look at the experience and the stories that we had from the media, there were kids who ran several kilometers. Yes. Families, indeed, were apart. Women didn't know where their kids were. Husbands didn't know where their wives were.
And families were worried.
And people can be traumatized, particularly those who saw it. There can be a change in the lives of people forever. We were very lucky. I have used that route, that it was weekend. We were very lucky because weekdays,
And it was
raining. Weekdays, you have huge numbers of people there. Huge. I have used that road at that particular time several times. And assuming that this was a weekdays. Now, the other question is that as a result of the springing up of the fuel station and subsequently a gas station, you have businesses that sprang up there. KFC, I'm told, was around there. You have another fuel station direct opposite. And you have a lot of people, trot. It becomes a station, a convergent point that people will come and take their vehicles. And in fact, traffic flow at the area too is not something that we... Now, the other question is that...
KFC is a bit far away.
The other question is that we are told that the vehicle came... In fact, I didn't even know this until when Mr. Gentry talked about it. When this thing happened, I began asking questions. That when you drive a vehicle, even if it means a kilometer, and then you stop, the engine will be heated. There will be some heat. So the slightest leakage of gas can be hugely, inflammable. Now, the understanding I'm now getting is that the engine was on whilst they were discharging or offloading the gas. Is that the thing that ought to be done?
Obviously not.
Obviously not. Now, my understanding also is that when you drive and then you stop, it should take a longer period, at least a number of hours, by which time you would have been convinced that the engine is completely calm, and then you can have some of such discharge. Now, if the regulations and the rules are that there is a valve that you need to, I shudder to think that those who were discharging do not have that skill and that training. Because if they had, they would have been able to know that you don't use a material to do that, or a rag. You use what? You close the valve. And I think that it would have saved a lot of lives. So what I'm simply saying is that, look, we need to take a serious look at this. And we cannot look at it in isolation. Let's ensure that the rules, the already existing rules, are adhered to. There should be punitive measures to those who violate. And that is why I said on a different platform that we ought to support this government in any decision that is taken to ensure that we don't experience this again. Because when these things strike, they don't know NDC or MPP. Lives are devastated. Our compatriots have lost their lives. Many people's lives will never be the same. Must we experience that? And we are told statistically that the last 10 years, we lost 250 Ghanaians as a result of such explosion. 250. That is monumental.
That is.
And I really don't think that we need to go on that path again. And the only way we can do is what we all agreed, that there should be strict adherence to the protocols governing loading and discharging of such, and the measures put in place should be punitive enough to deal with those who...
Let me get a reaction from Mr. Saleh before Mr. Ganto Akapsi.
Yes, Steve.
Yeah.
First of all, the BVRs carrying this bulk gas have regulations. I'm sure...
you have to explain BVRs to our listeners. They might not know what BVRs are.
You know, these are the bulk vehicles. Carrying, this gas and even the petrol to these stations. There are protocols to discharging these materials, both gasoline and liquefied gas. Yes. So it is not as if that there is no regulation at all governing the discharge of these materials. There are. Indeed, if reports are true of what we have heard in the particular instance of the Moscow atomic disaster, as Mr. Jantwa said, the driver had left the vehicle on and was discharging. We even understand the equipment was not appropriate for discharging of the gas. If that is true, that is the highest level of culpability.
And that's impunity.
Yes, absolutely. What I was saying, that my brother is at edge, that I was surprised he was running like a headless chicken on a roller coaster.
I think that's a fair comment.
No, that's okay. I'm okay with that. They will not be able to tolerate it.
Of state-sanctioned kleptocracy is gone. And that we have a very disciplined president who would never allow for people to misbehave under his presidency. If indeed he was part of a state-sponsored kleptocracy that saw the overlooting of this country, this president would not sanction it, and that anybody who attempts doing it.
When you say kleptocracy,
yes,
you mean
there was high-level stealing in this country.
Corruption.
Yes, high-level.
How has that got to do with the safety standards in the gas explosion?
Absolutely. That's why when he started, I asked him, what has that got to do with gas explosion? Because I said, we must stem impunity in this country. People do a lot of things and get away with it. And that's why we keep getting some of these things recur. Until we begin to see bold leadership, ensuring that where we have gotten to, we will not go beyond that. The Vice President, His Excellency Dr. Bawumia, was in the north with His Excellency the President. What happened? The next moment he rushed to Accra. When he got there, he said, this must stop. When the president came back to Accra, he also visited the place, the hospitals and where the victims have, and said the same thing. And they didn't just left it to words. They went to cabinet and ensured that they came out with rules, with things that must be done to ensure that the downstream industry is sanitized. And like I said,
and this is the beginning of the process of
MPA, the regulator is already up and doing. They are ensuring that, and Prof was saying that if we had stopped the construction of these facilities, would it have stopped the accident? Probably.
Probably not. I mean,
probably.
To be realistic.
If we were serious as a country and ensured that things are done the right way, we wouldn't be here discussing this same matter. That is why this government is saying that cease construction of these facilities. Let's look at it again. Let's look at licensing regime. How do people acquire the licenses to build at the very places they do? If they are okay, in aftermath, I said, and I'm sure Prof would agree, Ghana is seeing a concentric model of development. Even if you go, especially relative to siting location of these facilities, people have said that let's move them from town centers and so on and so forth. Even if you take them outskirts, development is concentric. It will get there.
Catch up.
So at the end of the day, it is not the siting of these facilities. It is not moving them.
Necessarily the problem.
It is enforcement of the rules. It's the safety issues. And that is why central government must begin to take it seriously, that we have gotten too many of these. Where do we stop it? Exactly where cabinet has come to stop it. And I'm sure that from now onwards, the state institutions charged with the responsibility to ensuring that the state is well managed will do so. EPA, the metropolitan assemblies, MPA, the regulator, and the ministry itself. In fact, the oil marketing companies,
the drivers mates, everybody,
you know,
myself,
like,
and you.
Yes, all of us, okay, are involved in making sure that these things do not continue to happen rampantly as they are.
As it is.
Because we are seeing too many deaths that we could avoid, especially in the case of this atomic one. If the narrative we have heard is anything to go by, then it was a very needless accident.
Right,
or to say incident, because Prof said it is not just an accident. Because it is the negligence of some people that occasioned this particular incident.
Right.
So if we cannot help government to ensure that, you see, in Ghana, at the end of the day, it looks like everything runs back to the president. So now that it has gotten there and action has been taken, I'm sure that every subordinate of government would ensure that their work is done well. And if you are not living up to scale, I'm sure your head would be on the bulletin to be chopped.
Mr. Jantua,
the president can't run everything in this country. Yes, we have.
The president had to even step in to fly money to Brazil.
We have an executive presidency, but that's why we have institutions, and the president appoints people to run those institutions. The responsibility is on them. And for me, the president should have started firing people. Steve, there's one thing that is missing from these regulations that the president has put up. One of the key things that is missing is the tankers that transport this inflammable material. I don't see anything in there that says all tankers should now be checked thoroughly.
Or central distribution points.
Central distribution points before they leave. There has to be a time scale in which every tanker, if it's once a month, if it's twice a month, should be checked. At the point.
Not to cut you, sorry, but I think they do, because if you look at.
We're making.
I'm coming.
No, wait.
Yes.
Mr. Johnson was making reference to the.
I'm coming. I understand. All right. I think these tankers have those meshes
in place already.
Yes.
So
they have these tracking devices on them.
The things that the president has outlined,
yes,
it's still there. They have it there.
I understand your point that it is not captured in the statement, and I'm saying that the tracking of these tankers already is in place. I know that MPA
it's not working.
It does. They monitor
if it were working, there wouldn't have been a leak.
The leak happened at the point of discharge.
But you think it just happened? You think it
the
just
narrative
happened?
I have
do you
heard,
listen to yourself?
I'm coming. The narrative I have heard that when they got to the station did not have the appropriate gadget for discharge.
We're not sure now, because the fire service report has been sent to the presidency. We don't know what's in there, so we cannot make assumptions of what infractions existed at the time. And all of that.
We have all gone on a tangent. We are heavily relying on the narrative that we have picked. Aftermath this disaster.
Some of the narrative are being very flawed, including that of the Chinchinga.
We are not talking of the Chinchinga one. We are talking about some of the sequence that has led to this issue. There was a leak, whether we like it or not.
Yes,
but there was a leak before you interrupted.
The tanker, not a leak from the discharge of gas from the actual installation.
Well, that is not.
It was the tanker. That's where the leak started.
Mr. Janto was making a point. So, Mr. Saleh, let's make Mr. Janto make his point.
The tanker was loaded to the destination.
I'm saying that malfunction on the tanker did not just happen. And even if it happened there, the driver should have followed regulation by moving the tanker away. I'm sure there are regulations in place. The moment you detect a leak, something must be done. I will ask the question, what kind of fire extinguishers are on the tankers? You know the kind of extinguishers they use for aeroplanes when airplanes catch fire, the foamy type. That is the type we should be using for this one. And are the drivers and the mates trained in using these things? Are they equipped enough? What is the regulation? When it started leaking, it was a driver who was telling people that it's leaking, please stay back, stay back. Was that what he was supposed to do? And anyway, these installations that we have, why do we have people surrounding that area, having business in that area?
Indomie seller, rose plantain seller,
because probably there hasn't been there before. Look, there is one station on the Achimota Golf Course Road, which is a GOIL. Right at the back is a gas station. Yes, I must agree that the place is well done. However, if anything happens straight, the petrol station is going to catch fire. They are very close. The proximity is so close. People come there with their cars. And when you go and you see people discharging they are even standing by the equipment that is discharging. If anything happens, and you see even the people standing there using their mobile phones there, some have their car still on. Ignition, it just takes a small ignition. The whole place is up in flames. And if the whole place is up in flames, all the adjoining buildings there can also catch fire. And so for me, with these regulations that the president has said, the major one is the tanker vehicles. how old the vehicles are, at what age should we stop using them. Even the tires on the tankers should be checked constantly. Because what if there's a leak and the driver has loaded and he's going to the gas station and on the way there is a leak?
Right. Mr. Janto, I will take a break, but quickly I will read some of your messages which have been coming in. This one says, good morning, my brother and your viewers across the world. I personally did not see the correlation between increase in enrollment at the various colleges of education and nursing training colleges, an increase in unemployment. You increase in their enrollment and you cannot employ them, right? I will be discussing that when we come from the break. And haven't we learned any lessons from gas explosions? I'm really sad when I heard 7 people died. 64 discharged, 68 on admission. This one doesn't have a name. This is coming from Zion, Alhaji Zion. Wow, thank you very much. And good morning, TV3. The main cause of all these explosions is LPG. Hardly do we hear of filling stations. And one of the fires, apart from the Circle disaster on June 3rd, there were petrol and diesel underground of Total at Atomic Junction that day, but did not catch fire during the explosion. Banning LPG gas stations is not the solution, but safety measures. This is from Michael Amasamang. And Michael still says that why will state institutions sleep on their job and wait for cabinet decisions before they can act and perform their obligatory duties as is expected of them? Ghana has all the beautiful laws, I agree with you, in the world, even more than the UK and the US. But the biggest challenges are enforcement and a human face. All state institutions will be held strictly liable for what happened in other jurisdiction. You didn't say your name, but AU Farouk Tamale says, good morning to you, Stephen, and your panelists. The policy taken by government to assess wrong and unauthorized gas and filling stations is a step in the right directions. Thank you. And Alale Osman in Boko Highway says, I think the MPP government is fast failing Ghanaians with its promises. This Alawa issue is not only deceptive, but also postponing of disgrace. So we'll be talking about the allowance when we return from the break. And Daniel Tete Asinge Kropon says, Ghana, we're fond of incidents before solutions. It's about time our leaders have to show their supremacy for such.
I just want to make a brief. I think that
we were going to take a break.
One thing I would advise my brother to understand is that when you have a national tragedy, you resist the temptation to do cheap politics with it, and that is what I have avoided.
We'll take a break.
When you have a burst oil, a contaminated oil, in which embarrassingly the Minister of Energy and National Security so-called reports indeed embarrass the government the more, and nothing is being done, that can result to some of this. Do you know there was another contaminated oil internally?
I'm afraid that we need
These are the issues we are looking at, where the government has demonstrated that he's unwilling. No, the government conjecturing. The Minister for Energy himself said that they have had a report from BNI. Who asked BNI to do that? Is it not embarrassing?
This is New Day. We'll take a break, and when we return, we'll have more discussions on our table. You can join us via WhatsApp 0500 60 70 70 and post your comments on our Facebook or on Twitter at News on TV3. We'll be right back. Welcome back. This is still New Day, and we're discussing key happenings in the week, and we've taken most of the time to discuss the gas explosion which took place at Atomic Junction. Now, there is the issue of the training allowances which the previous government cancelled and this government reintroduced. There was a launch for it, and a lot of fanfare and jamboree and a lot of celebration, which was an indication that the government was happy fulfilling a promise. And then you have to also note that each student will receive 400 cedis, and there are about 58,000 students to benefit from this. The NDC-led government's argument for withdrawing the allowances was to increase enrollment and eventually meet the shortage of these professionals who are in critical need. But will the restoration of the allowance mean lower enrollment? is this a zero-sum game? A critical question. So we'll be discussing all of that. But I'll give Professor Jidonu a minute to react to something he wanted to say about the gas explosion before we continue, sir.
No, it's just a follow-up to what I said before.
Yes.
That you see, when you have a system, you put in place a system or policy to do A, B, C, D. If something goes wrong, what you do first is to go back and check and see what you say you will be doing or people should be doing, were they being done, and what happened before this thing happened. When you look at the President 9-point directive, I think there should be an element of that. That is, say, before we go implementing new regulations, we must check the old ones and see whether they're, for example, the training aspect of it.
Yeah.
We could go back and do an audit of
See
all the
what
gas
the
stations and
previous
see
training
whether the
regimes have
training,
worked.
whether they have been certified, the certificates have been issued. I think when we do that audit, regulation enforcement audit, I think we should be able to find out that yes, because of lapses in implementing of these regulations, that is where we got to where we are now. When you sort that at first, then you ask yourself, do we need to put in new regulations before you add some new ones? Where I found out that reading through the president regulation, the regulation he passed out, a number of them have that element. Let's first do some audits. Let's check whether things are being done the way they're supposed to be done. But we should not stop there. We need evidence. Evidence in terms of whether they are actually being done. When we get that done, we get that information published, then we all know that, hey guys, we have rules, we were not following them. This is where we got to where we are now. Now that we are going to put in new rules, first let's make sure the old ones are enforced, and I'm sure that if we take that approach, I think we will get somewhere, rather than just throwing some more rules without knowing how far we have done in the old rules.
Right, thank you very much. So let me begin with you, Mr. Jantwa, about this reinstalling or I don't know how to put it. Restoration.
You realize even confused and how to.
I'm sorry, but it's just I cannot find the right words. But restoring the nursing training allowances, Mr. Jantwa. I mean, I'm looking at this in terms of what the CPP government would have done. Is this the right thing?
The time the CPP was in power, that is in Nkrumah's time, and now, are absolutely totally different times. Even 79 we were in power, and compare that time to now, the population of nurses has escalated, have grown, and all that kind of thing. But the question I ask myself, Steve, is that if the MPP could do it, why couldn't the NDC do it?
Corruption.
What?
We're not sure of that.
We are not sure of that. You can't impute such a thing if you
sure
don't have the evidence.
Yeah, because the NDC government actually did give reasons why it withdrew the allowance. So it will use it to expand existing facilities, to increase enrollment. That's fair.
So then you ask the question, where is this government getting the 2 million cedis from to pay for this?
Borrowing.
Have they been able to tell us where that money is coming from?
Borrowing.
You see, because down the line, when it now becomes a challenge, then we go into things like the oil revenue to pick money that is not part of the priority areas. And so for me, yes, it's a good thing, but at least we should be told
where the money will be
where is the money coming from, so that there's sustainability in what the president is trying to do. The other side of the coin is that responsibility also lies on the nurses. Yes, they've had a debt, but they are happy. We are getting 400 cedis. What about their role as carers? When you go to the hospitals, how they treat patients, all has to be. So for me, it is not only giving the money, it is the entire structure and framework of the profession. It has to improve, because patients will tell you that when they go to hospitals, they don't get the kind of care, they don't get the kind of attention that they expect nurses to give. For me, it's a good thing. For me, it should also do the things that it's supposed to do, and the reason why the president saw it fit to restore these monies to them.
But agric training, students from agric training colleges also want government to provide their allowances as well. this is going to
were
become
they part of the scheme?
Yeah, they told them, they promised them.
And
well, they were made a promise.
No, they promised them.
No.
They promised them.
Okay, so
let's.
I beg your pardon. I was asking
Read your
a follow-up.
manifesto. Have you read your manifesto?
I was asking a follow-up from Mr.
manifesto.
Janto's. So let's make Mr. Janto wrap up so that
was that part of it? I don't know. MDC, MPP manifesto.
Yeah.
Was that part of it?
Reinstating
Reinstating that?
allowances.
Okay. NDC say it is. MPP say it isn't.
NDC didn't write the manifesto for us.
If it so happens,
but you've shredded your manifesto.
If it so happens that
can we get Mr. Janto to make his point?
Let them sit together. Then maybe they can have a private conversation. If it so happens that it wasn't part and parcel of what the government promised, is it something that they are now trying to bring into the scheme of affairs of these types of payments? Because if it's not part, why are they asking for it? What is the locus for them to say that you also promised us and you haven't paid? And if they did promise them, they should pay.
They did.
If they did promise them, they should pay. Let's see the evidence. I will try and find the evidence as to whether the MPP.
I don't remember hearing it.
I don't remember hearing it. And so if that is the case, why are they asking for it? It's the, remind me, it's the agricultural
training colleges.
Agriculture training colleges. Have we been paying money to them?
Yeah.
The NDC pay money to them?
We're giving allowance.
And how much allowance were you giving them?
I can't quite remember.
And was it part and parcel of the cancelling of the allowances when the NDC was in power? Then automatically,
then
if you've done one, you've got to do the other. So again, it all boils down to sustainability. But
Mr. Janto, seriously, I mean, I've been looking at other professionals going into training, spending money to do their train themselves and come out and find jobs. And when we more like spoon feed nurses and agri-colleges and they come out and they still don't have jobs, should we still be doing that? There are many who describe this as like Father Christmas. Well, you're giving money, we're not sure where it's going to lead.
Let me read something to you. It says trainee allowances were introduced in the 60s by President Dr. Kwame Nkrumah of the Convention People's Party. It was cancelled in the 70s by the Progress Party government led by Abrefa Buzia, the MPP, as an offshoot of the Progress Party. The PNDC government under Flight Lieutenant Rawlings reintroduced in the 80s to check an exodus of trained teachers to Nigeria. A quota system was put in place to set the number of students that a college of education can admit based on how many students the government could afford to pay. The quota system is believed to have led to the decline in admissions to colleges of education. Some 20 years of the quota system, the colleges are said to be operating below 45% of their capacity. In 2014, the NDC government cancelled the allowance. In September 2017, the MPP government restored it. So, based on this historical fact, we should actually look into the essence of paying these things and what it means, what the objective is. Because if it's declining colleges where these students go to because of these payments, then a whole, should be looked at, audit should be looked at to see whether it is worth it. It's not just a question of paying money. And you see, again, it goes down to the psyche of the Ghanaian. Money is king everywhere you go. Everything you do, everything is money, 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 without content. Without content. And so far as I'm concerned, the content is most important because nurses are supposed to look after sick people. People who are not well and are looking for some kind of health and assistance in getting well. So it's very important that we take another look at it. One, to see if it's sustainable, to see whether the content of what we're doing is right, and then make a final judgment as to whether we should continue. But this on and off, on and off, on and off, I'm sure if the NDC government comes back into power, they will cancel it. If a CPP comes back into power, we will say Nkrumah did it, so we would also do it. So we need to find some form to stabilize it and make sure that it is something that would benefit the Ghanaian.
Murtala Mohammed.
Well, I want to look at it from the perspective of not just a politician, but a perspective of a patriot, an intellectual basis with evidences, and that would tell your viewers
and listeners
on that this government cares less about the progress of this country, as long as fulfilling a lofty campaign promise, and in their view, something that can give
restoring
them
the nursing training allowance is lofty.
Yes, absolutely lofty, and I'll tell you the reason.
Because you think that it has
no
not
benefits? I think I'll provide you the evidences. Nobody ever said that it wouldn't have any benefits. As a matter of fact, the NDC was doing it, so why would we turn around and say it wouldn't? But I want us to go through the historical antecedents. This was something Osajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah introduced, and it is understandable why he introduced it at that time. He introduced it at a time when we had just gained independence, a young country. We didn't have a lot of professionals, and in fact, not many people were willing to get engaged in such noble professions. Teaching was smaller, teaching and nursing, because opportunities were abound. As long as you study and got yourself engaged, you were bound to have a lot of opportunities. So one, we were a very young country. We didn't have enough nurses. We didn't have enough teachers. We were a young country that opportunities were abound. People had choices, and not many people were willing to get into the teaching and then the nursing profession. So, and again, the population too was small. Nkrumah felt that there was the need for something to be done to motivate people to want to engage in such professions. So this thing was introduced. So there is every single sense why Nkrumah did what he did. Now we have had this when Nkrumah was unjustifiably and criminally overthrown. You had the Buza administration, a government in which the current president played a pivotal role. Indeed, withdrew this policy against every single expert advice, because the unflinching desire to destroy the legacy of Nkrumah and every single thing Nkrumah stood for. The circumstances prevailing at the time Nkrumah introduced this policy were still prevailing. Yet, against every single aspect, it was removed. Now, in the 80s, you had former President Rawlings as a military leader who felt, look, those circumstances are still prevailing. The patient-nurses ratio and then the teacher-pupils ratio was at a precarious level. So there was the need for something to be done. So former President Rawlings reintroduced it. And as
the exodus to Nigeria.
The exodus to Nigeria. And as a matter of fact, there were a lot of people who were willing to, but the opportunities were not there. And again, what also happened was that former President Rawlings got some funding to support government so that we can have a lot of people enrolled into the teacher and nursing training colleges to pursue those courses in these two professions. Now, this thing was done. Now, we sit today under the NDC, and then we said that the teacher training colleges and nurses training colleges have all been upgraded. They now run diploma courses. And as a result of that, we still do not meet the ratio. So what President Mahama and the NDC did was that, let's take away now the allowances, because population is increasing. The demand for more teachers and nurses is at all-time high. Because once population increases, of course, Medicare, health delivery, the demand for it has become more complex and more demanding. So let's take away and then substitute it with a student loan trust. So it wasn't as if that it was taken, but it was then substituted with the student loan trust. The other thing was that a lot of infrastructure has been provided, never apart from Nkrumah, that any government has provided infrastructure in the health sector than this, and I'll provide you with the evidences. Now, what we did was that when we did that, admission increased. There was a huge increase in admission. And in fact, many people applied for admission, knowing very well that the allowances were not available. They were going to have access to student loan trust, yet the schools could not even admit all those who applied for. Now, publicly, heads of those institutions have indicated time and again that they were admitting below capacity. What it therefore means is that they would have admitted more than they were admitting. But the admissions were regulated by the ability of government to give those allowances. Now, if government says that, look, I have budgeted this amount of money for allowances, so don't admit more than this particular threshold. So you realize that it was affecting. Now, if you look at the World Health Organization, in fact, they peg the ratio of patient, nurses to be 40 nurses to 10,000 people. In Ghana, ours is 22 nurses to 10,000 people. So it means that we are even far, far below the peg that the World Health Organization indeed have had. If you look at teaching, for instance, too. Now, the Ghana Education Service, in fact, the Midwifery and Nurses and Midwifery Council themselves have indicated that we have a deficit of 38,000 nurses in this country. A deficit of 38,000. Now, as a result of the introduction that was done, and a meeting that was held in June in Koforidua this year, with the Minister of Health and the heads of those associations, the Association of Ghana Midwifery and Nurses Council, a circular was sent by the Minister of Health. And in fact, the circular that this association sent to the various heads of institutions indicated that they had this information, this directive from the Minister of Health, that they needed to cut down the number of people they were going to admit. Mr. Gentwa, 2016, the number of people who were admitted into the nursing training college was 7,335. 2017, as a result of the quota system. And by the way, the Minister for Health was on joy and said that yes, the quota system is implemented, that they are strictly adhering to the quota system. 2017, they admitted 5,735. So a shortfall of 1,600 nurses. Now multiply that by 4. It means that by the time the MPP leaves office in 2020, they are going to deny this country 6,400 nurses. That is the competence they are talking about. 6,400 nurses.
So your argument is that reintroducing the allowances shouldn't have come with a cap.
No.
I mean, but government cannot
you cannot do that. Government can't do that. And by the way, I have listened to some funny argument that is being made, that every government has a priority, and that the priority of this government is education and health, and therefore will find the money. Simple economics will tell you that you can do that by only doing what they call the opportunity cost. You must forgo one to be able to do one. In a country where you haven't met your revenue targets, I am saying that this country is going to be denied by this government and this party
of 6,000
the services of 6,400 nurses
because of the reintroduction of
and
the
it is
allowances.
going to make the already precarious nurses patient ratio more serious.
Let me get
now. I am saying that, and this thing is happening at a time when we have population increase. But let me just give you briefly the statistics. When we introduce and increase this, what the NDC government did, and permit me, I'll just go through it briefly. Now, if you look at the life expectancy between 2009, it was 60 years, and by 2013, it was 63 years. Now, the NDC indeed ensured that we'll build a lot of hospitals, cheap compounds across the country. There was an increase, an expansion of 400 beds. The Tamale Teaching Hospital. We have 617-bed University of Ghana Teaching Hospital. We have constructions of a modern emergency department at Kolebu. We have commencement of 500-bed military hospital in Kumasi, 140-bed police hospital. We have 130-bed. What we have done is that we increased these numbers, invested hugely in infrastructure in anticipation of the more numbers of nurses. Now today, what economic benefit, and is it even sensible that you provide money to pay people allowances, yet you have indicated to them that your job is not guaranteed?
So you would have recommended that government maintain the cancellation of the allowances?
No, we never cancelled it. We swapped it with the student loans. By the way, it's even not fair. We have the universities that run diploma courses in nursing. We have University of Education, Winneba, and campuses that run diploma courses in teaching. Now, they are all going to be trained and given the same certificate as diploma. Yet, a section of them are given allowances. And I'm asking a simple question. What use is it to spend money to train people when you have indicated to them that I can't employ you? You have to look for a job. And by the way, why would the state spend money training people and they are not going to pay back? Because these are professionals that we spend money giving them allowances.
Let me get a reaction.
Yet there isn't any opportunity to pay back.
From,
I mean, this is incompetence at its highest level.
So, Mr. Salem, so you heard it. The capping system is going to reduce the numbers of nurses we train eventually by the time the MPP is out of power. And Murtala Mohammed is saying that you could have resorted to maintaining the student loan arrangement that the NDC government left in place instead of totally cancelling it, reintroducing the training allowances and introducing a cap as well. Many people are not happy with the cap in particular.
I am not surprised that Murtala will sit here and describe it as lofty and say,
but if you're paying 400 CDs to 58,000 students, that's huge.
To do
I mean,
an intellectual analysis, I expected to have heard something very rich and not very cruel politics.
What is more read than
that
the
NDC had attempted to do relative to healthcare and student trainee nurses. It is a very, it is very
allow the man to land.
That
please.
The NDC feels this way and is always engaged in doom-saying. When we're bringing the national health insurance, it's the same things they said. Free SHS, they say the same things.
Oh,
I am not surprised that they are back with the same moribund argument. First of all, Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo, President of the Republic of Ghana, has said time without number, leadership
You're not addressing the issue of cap I raised and the issue of introduction of allowances and the fact that it will affect the general numbers of nurses that are trained by the end of the MPP's term.
Invest the money of the state in a very productive manner that will have benefit for. Indeed, this year alone, over 16,000 nurses have been employed within the 10 months of the Nana Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. It cannot be that, and these people left them since 2012. They didn't employ nurses and they sat home for over 5 years. That's true. That is a big lie. That's a big lie. You only gave financial clearance when you have lost the elections for 8,000 nurses, and we came and so went ahead and employed those 8,000 nurses. Yes. So you left these people to sit home for over 5 years without employing them. You come and sit here and you are talking about, you know, people not finding jobs and so on and so forth. When you left the same people home and refused to employ them because you are chewed in the meat and it has gotten to the bone and you are still sucking on the bone because the excessive corruption that this country experienced under your regime was one unparalleled that has never happened in this country before. To the extent that your founder said that this is the most corrupt government that he has ever seen.
Stay on track.
I'm coming.
You want us to talk about what Rollins says about Nana? If you are not
the restoration of the allowances for our teachers is in line with government's vision to ensure that we have good, affordable health care for our people, and that the president's vision is that we see health care as extremely essential. If we want a very motivated workforce for this country, they must be healthy to ensure that we are able to move this country from a third world to a first world. So
your view is that the reintroduction of the allowances will encourage more
we have decided to encourage the training of more nurses to the extent that when we in this country, you know, have more facilities, we can, you know, bring these nurses to work in them. Listen,
even your budget, there's any facility you are providing. You are giving a quota system. You sit here and talk about
which quota system.
The Minister for Health.
If your government refused to think outside the box and was not able to pay the allowances and still find a way to do some of the things that this government is doing and still paying, then you have a problem. I'm coming. This government is going to, you know, go on a drive of massive expansion and building more facilities. We started CHIPS compound in this country. We started CHIPS compound. We brought the concept of CHIPS compound.
How many did you do?
It doesn't matter how many we did. We built more CHIPS compound.
In the budget, what infrastructure facilities are
I'm telling you, you sat here talking about CHIPS compound. We brought the idea of CHIPS compound.
So what? How many did you do?
When you talk of health care, aside bringing the national health insurance, aside bringing the national health insurance
for 8 years. So obviously,
Steven, forget Mutala. This is a government that has come and it is clearing the debts of over 1.2 billion you had left with national health insurance.
Right, so Mr. Salem,
it is your debt you left.
I think we'll have to wrap up and give other people the opportunity.
I'm coming.
The infrastructure facility you have in this your budget.
With time, there would not be backlog of nurses who are unemployed. We would employ all of them. And by the time these nurses...
So the introduction of the CAP system is to help assist that in clearing the backlog. I mean, I'm trying to link the introduction of the allowances
number of nurses
to the introduction of CAP.
By Murtala and the president of the NDC, under John Dramani Mahama, His Excellency, we would employ them, and that this the numbers that would come out subsequently, we will be able to place them as well. It's not a matter of cap.
I said the
that is not the thrust of the argument. We should be able to
even. We have no jobs
I'm coming.
You sit here and then you are telling us something different. The Minister for Health said that they are not going to employ them. You sit here, you are conjuring something. He said it on Joy FM. He said it on
your government is an embarrassment to these nurses that you are sitting here and embarrassing yourself
and your government. Discussion. Professor Jido
you left these people for over 5 years.
On this issue.
For 5 years. You left these people unemployed. We have come and we're employing them. And we have restored allowances. And you sit here and describe it as lofty.
Mr. Salem to land.
What kind of country?
No, I can understand your inability to communicate on this issue.
A very good communicator. It is the difficult on this issue. The former president himself, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama, said that even if you lose the election, he will not restore.
And he lost the election.
And he lost the election. Yes. For them, the narrow-mindedness did not allow them to see that this was essential, and that we said we find it essential and we will do it. Their propaganda secretary, Solomon Kansa, also stated the same position of Murtala.
We will explore the issue of funding and all of that. However,
as you'll be aware, the issue of sustainability is not even the matter.
Really?
Yes.
It should
How
be.
come we have been able to sustain the national health insurance? Yeah. It's about priority. It's about choices. If the one you nearly collapsed is because of the corruption that you riddled in it. Is that not why you removed? Is that not why you removed Sylvester Mensah from there? Is that not why you removed Sylvester Mensah from there? That he was corrupt.
So, Mr. Salem,
you nearly collapsed.
Mr. Salem, I think I'll take you and
just a few minutes before, as I land. We believe prioritizing is the way to go. On the issue of sustainability, the paperless post system alone, that we are seeing tremendous inflow of cash. That the Vice President has ensured that is going on, has brought tremendous benefits to this country. That so
the NPP government strategy is to streamline revenue generation,
to
plug
fund
all the
these
loopholes,
things, and still do the developmental projects that we want to do.
Right.
We will do. It's about priority. It's choices, and that we choose to use our money in prudent manner. That will ensure that these people
we need to move away from the next allowance and discuss other things.
The 232 a year. You gave 2 fumigation contracts to Zoom Lion. That's over 400 million.
Professor Jidono, I need you to comment. I would be grateful if you could take your device from the microphone. That's the microphone. Yeah. So you've heard all the back and forth. Sustainability, whether the allowances, reintroducing them was good, whether running it alongside with a cap system is what we need. Mr. Kwame Janto has raised the issue of sustainability. We all want to know what the money is going to come from to pay 400 CDs for 58,000 students. Agri colleges are also asking for the allowances to be restored and all of that. Are we doing it right?
Well, Steve, I don't know. The straight answer is I don't know. Let's look at the sustainability issue. You say what, 58,000? Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Times 400. That gives us something like 232. That's 232 million a month.
No, a year.
A year.
A year.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The 58,000. No. It's a month.
It's a month.
We have 58,000 nurses.
You don't even do the policy.
58,000. You're paying them 400 each. That's 232. No,
Should I give a
that's about 24 million. I'll present 24 million a month. That's what I got.
That's a lot of money.
Yes.
Okay, multiply that
So
by
it means
by
that
12.
it's fair for
Multiply
us
that-
to find out
multiply
where the
that
money
by
is going
12.
to come from.
When you multiply that by 12, you get around about 278 million for the 12 years.
A year.
For a year. Multiply that by 4 of the Akufo-Addo's regime. That will get it close to 1.2 billion
Yeah,
for the 4-year period.
that's a lot.
Well,
In the country where we are revenue
the
to-
government may say it's a lot, but it's worth it. But let's get the fact right. It's round about, certainly it's not less than 1 billion in the next 4 years. It's round about 1.2 billion. Okay? They may even increase it as the years go by. Because you may not be giving it the 400 every year. And inflation. You must increase
more
it.
students.
Very good.
might
That
be
is just the
enrolling.
nurses we are talking about. Now, it looks as if Christmas have come early for the nurses. We wish them all the best. But the issue is this. It's not clear to me. You see, the British civil servants coined the term economical with the truth. Because it's not good to tell a colleague that you're a liar. Okay, so when you listen to the politicians, you don't want to say you are lying, you are speaking the truth. You say, well, you are being economical of the truth.
You're massaging the truth.
Well, I wanted to coin another term. They are being political with the truth. As a matter of fact, when I listen to my two colleagues now, I'm getting more confused. Mutala presented a good case. He also presented a good case.
No, his wasn't good,
Well,
Prof.
well,
His was a disaster.
well, it's all political.
I mean, he
truth.
told us how determined his government is
Very
to
good.
find
Yes,
the
yes.
money,
When you listen to both,
prioritize it.
now when you listen to both, you may say it's correct, and it's correct. Somebody might be
Prof,
wrong
I
somewhere.
provided facts. So.
Well, that is the point. The listeners down there, the question is whether we are actually educating the listeners. Yes. Now, let's go to the basis. You see, when a government, first, a government in every country has the responsibility.
It's for 10 months, not 12 months.
10 months.
What is
400 is for 10 months, not 12 months.
10 months?
Yes.
I mean, they give them 400 for 10 months.
Yes, for 10 months.
Oh,
Each year.
okay. So that calculation is wrong. So it's not a
Well, it's
monthly
only
allowance.
shy of 2 months. I mean, you calculated by 12 months.
Yeah,
so
okay.
So
Around about.
those 2 months, when you calculate it, it's a huge
It's
amount.
a
Okay,
huge amount,
but
yeah.
it's just a little bit up
Yeah.
to about 1 billion.
Yes.
It's not 1.2 billion, but it's still a lot of money. We must find it for somewhere. Okay? Now, it's a responsibility of every government in every country to develop its economy. One of the key resources for developing any economy is human resources. But governments don't jump here and there to develop the human resources. They do human resource planning over the years. I don't know whether anybody have sat down anywhere to determine how many nurses do we need over the next couple of years, what will be the demand for nurses, and where we're going to employ them. Whether we're going to have oversupply of nurses. Philippines now have oversupply of nurses. You know, they are the one who produce a lot of nurses and export it all over the world. They invested so much in nursing education now they now have oversupply. The government, to its human resource planning, have given a directive a couple of years ago that they must close down some of the nursing schools because they don't need the moral supply, even to supply the world. So I'm not quite clear whether the Mahama government and the Akufo-Addo government have consulted their technical people to actually give us some statistics about how many nurses do we need, whether we are going to have a shortfall over supposing they say, well, we have done our analysis, there will be a shortfall in the next couple of years, so we need to find a way to boost supply.
Prof,
Hence,
Prof,
well,
I'm sorry, I'm just giving this information.
Yes.
The assessment that was made by the Registered Nurses and Midwives Association in June this year stated that we have a deficit of 38,000 nurses.
Okay.
38,000.
Very good.
And you are putting a cap, asking them to reduce. This is insensitive. This is recklessness.
Okay, they have this
38,000 deficit.
So
and in fact, by the World Health Organization,
yes,
nurse-patient ratio should be 40 nurses to 10,000 people.
So
Ghana, we have 22 nurses.
Somebody have done the analysis. Somebody have done analysis that we have a deficit. Is that correct?
Yes.
So a deficit means that we need more nurses.
Yes.
Now the question is, whose approach is the better one?
Admit more. Now we are cutting down admission. We are going to lose 6,400 in the next 4 years. 6,400. That is what.
Mutala, but he didn't accept your analysis.
No, but that's a fact.
Well,
I have provided, Prof. I have provided the figures, Prof.
Yes.
I can even give you, Prof. I can give you specific schools. Let me just give you some 3 or 5 schools. Prof, let me give you 3 or 5 schools.
I'm surprised that you take
and the facts can easily be checked. Ntotrosu College of Nursing, last year, they admitted 235. This year, 82. Donko Ofin Nursing and Midwifery, last year, they admitted 250. This year, 109. Kolebu, 2006, and they admitted 245. This year, 153. Tamale Nursing, 220. So the evidence is there. They simply do not care. They are desperately wanting to fulfill the campaign.
You are ambushing Professor.
Okay, so
he should also provide alternative facts.
So you said that there is an evidence that there is a deficit in the supply of nurses.
Yes.
So there's a need for us to boost supply.
There's no evidence.
Well, you see, that's where we come to the political issue. We come to the same problem again. You see,
look. If Mutala,
please, can we make
can I land, please?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can I land a bit, please?
Yes, sir.
So we need to do some analysis to know whether we need additional nurses
or not.
And when we say yes, we need an additional nurses,
we need to find a strategy.
The strategy to do it. Now the strategy.
Otherwise, we'll end up dishing out money to everybody.
Good, because this is going to cost money. Because this money I've just calculated. Let's say just about 1 billion. You could have calculated how many hospitals
this can build.
How
many schools this
can build?
How many roads?
Very good. So you see, the way to plan development is to do some analysis, do some real planning. So it's not clear to me from both the NDC side and the MPP side whether those analyses have been carried out.
But
no, it's very important.
Under the presidency of John Ajikun Kufuor, for 8 years, we paid the allowances. We still did chiefs compound. We still did.
And so on. Which hospital did you build?
So if today, Mutala, your government,
no, tell me
because of the stealing.
Why are you not allowing Professor Jidono to make?
Don't come and sit here and say there's
because he's making some valid.
I have indicated the number of hospitals. So tell us under Kufuor.
Can you make Professor Jidono make his point?
You have to stop the thievery that we saw under your.
I say which hospital?
The kind of
thieves are the Flagstaff House. There are 2 thieves.
I think you should allow Professor Jidono. Let's be.
There are 2 thieves at the Flagstaff House.
Let's kindly allow Professor Jidono to make his point.
Prof, so the point.
Please make your point.
I'm going to land.
I like where we are because this is a demonstration of what you're saying.
Yes.
That NDC MPP are saying different things.
They are saying different things. It all sound very credible, okay, but that leaves us very confused. But for me, it's a very simple arithmetic. If we need more nurses, and somebody can ascertain that we need more nurses, it doesn't necessarily mean that we should give them allowances, okay? We could have used that money to open up more nursing schools and train more nurses. But if the MPP think that probably the best way to do it is to give allowances, but also assure that in addition to giving allowances, they are not going to cap the nursing enrollment as Mutala is saying, then well and good. But the question still arises, where are they going to get the money from? The money issue is very, very important. Because you see, once you institute this allowance, you must implement it for a couple of years, not only 4 years, not only 5 years, not only 8 years. So the sustainability is very important. I like the point that Mutala made, the issue of opportunity cost of money. Okay? Yes, we need more nurses, but what is the best way to do it? So if the NPP government can come out, the NPP government can come out with the followings. 1, they have done analysis that there's a shortage of nurses. 2, the best way we think we can solve this problem is to 1, motivate the nurses, give them some allowance, but we want to assure the nation that we are not going to cut down on nursing enrollment, as Mutala is asserting, then we're all well and good. And then the next question,
I want to give the non-politicians a voice. So, Mr. Jantua, please.
What the intake of 2015
the intake.
You see, the ugly politics you do, because you think that it is an election year.
I think
you cancel.
I think we're drawing this into a battle of NDC MPP. We have other people.
He's asking me the intake.
He's lying.
So, gentlemen,
he's asking me the intake.
As
a matter of fact, there was a 63% increase in enrollment between 2015 and 2016. 63%.
You are telling a very big lie here.
I just went to the goddamn.
What is the difference between 2015 and 2016?
I said, read this one. Read it to the
What is the difference between 2015 and 2016?
I've seen that. But Mr. Jantua, I want you to, Mr. Jantua, tell me. I beg your pardon, Murtala Mohammed.
Because it was an election year.
No, I think the politicians are taking over our show.
Oh no, he's also a politician.
Kindly, but he's not as vociferous as the two of you. So, Mr. Jantua, I've read the statement from the Nurses and Midwifery Council saying that there will be a deficit of about 38,000 in nurses and all of that. But the discussion ongoing now is sustainability. You brought up the issue of sustainability. Where are we going to get the money to fund this? What is the opportunity cost of doing this?
I think that the government is going to depend on the oil revenue.
That's your worry also.
Why do I say that? Within the 4 priority areas of this government, health is one of them, education is another of them. Now, the challenge is going to be with SHS, because SHS too is going to take a lot of the oil revenue.
Every year it's going to increase.
It's going to increase. How do you do the two? Because at the present moment, we haven't been told where the money is going to come from. If government can tell us the money is going to come from X pocket, Y pocket, Z pocket, then at least we know. But I suspect, because the priority area of health is within the scope of government's oil revenue spending, that is where the money is going to come from. Now, if we are not careful and the oil price, which is a determinant factor of oil revenue, drops, then we have a huge gap to be able to sustain. Well, it looks as if in this country, since we discovered oil, that is the first point of call we go to.
Anytime we need to fund something.
Why? Because
we dip our hands into it.
Exactly, because the oil money comes in a rush and it comes in quantum. And so it's the much easier place to be able to identify if you need money to do things like this. But, as I said, if we are lucky and the oil price goes up to $70, $80 a barrel, then perhaps we'll be able to sustain it. But government should show us how we are going to sustain both SHS and these allowances they've brought back. I'm not saying it's a wrong thing, but we should have value for money in terms of these allowances we're paying. It should just not be free money we are paying to nurses. There should be value for the money we are paying, because that money they are paying is the Ghanaian taxpayers' money, and we must see a credible return on that money.
Right. So let me just take some messages from our viewers and listeners. It's becoming very heated here, so we need to get you involved. This one from Gideon Bakari from Tamale says, restoration of the training allowance is a positive step in the right direction and fulfilled campaign promise. If from the same economy and same resources and lower borrowing rate, allowances have been restored, I only conclude that the previous government certainly didn't do Ghanaians any good. Yes, Ghana is working again. This is Gideon Bakari. Thank you very much. And this one says, please, it will be helpful if EPA and MPA are part of the discussion. They could tell us why these failures leading to the death of Ghanaians. I agree with you, but we were unable to bring them onto the show this morning to have a discussion on that. The promise made to the good people of Ghanaians regarding restoration of the student allowance is a clear disappointment. First, because first and second year students were made to believe that they would get their allowances when voted into power. Now it seems like it was a junior high school pupils that they made a promise to. I don't quite get a drift, but we're talking about allowances to nurses, not free SHS. Right, and then good morning. This one says, where are we heading to? Increasing intake in SHS, training, nursing, paying allowance, and can't employ, saying the public sector is choked. We would have to use that money to create jobs so that after hard days in school, you will rest after school. This is Halid from Tamale. And Mr. Mustafa Ibrahim Jinko from Nagbo, northern Ghana, says, is much great to hear that government restored trainees' allowances. In fact, to me, it is not the allowance restoration that matters. There should be positive posting after completion of their courses. I think the postings is what matters. And Mohammed from Yendi says, from my checks, it's indeed true that fuel stations do not often get fires, but I don't know whether the authorities bother to know the measures why this is so. And Mr. Host, government has done well by the restoration of the allowances. They should note that in 2016-2017, batch of newly trained teachers are still at home. The sad news is their intention not to post all of them. We plead for them to look into that again, because that has never been the case. And why this time? We have gone through a lot of trauma and will not want to hear anything like this. This is from Bertrand from Zabilla. With the reinstatement of the nursing allowances has brought back the quota system. Well, let them enjoy their salaries as allowances while in school and come home unemployed. This is from JJ from CFR platform. Right, thank you very much. So I'll take a reaction quickly from you, Mr. Salem. No, I'm told that we'll take a break, and because we'll take a break, and when we return, we will just move on with the discussion. I'm Stephen Enti. Remember that you can follow our live stream on 3news.com and on Facebook, and you could get interactive with us by sending your WhatsApp messages to 0500 60 70 70. We'll be back. Welcome back to New Day, Saturday edition. We're having a very interesting discussions. And for those of you who are listening to us on 3FM 92.7, you're sending in your messages. There's one critical question which I want to read. This one coming from Nabita. This is from, K.O. Sunungwa, I beg your pardon. Says, good morning, Mr. NT. Please ask the MPP man that the 16,000 nurses they employed, which hospitals did they send them to, whereas they've not cut salt for any single project? That allowance they are paying now can build a lot of hospitals. The quota system introduced now, even private hospitals are affected. Check from Nabita, right? So we'll wrap up on the discussion with the nurses and training allowances. So, Mr. Murtala Mohammed, I'm giving you the opportunity. No, you were coming in before. Yeah, you were coming in before the break. That's true. That's true. That's true. So yeah, he comes and you come. So, Mr. Salem, a lot of things are happening. So here is a question that 16,000. You made reference to some 16,000 nurses.
You ought to be corrupt. First, you see, we must be careful some of the things we do in this country. No government would intentionally collapse its own economy with things that it cannot do.
So the NDC did intentionally collapse this economy?
They were super incompetent. And the level of exacerbated,
and that was
exacerbated the problem. For them, it was thievery. That was our problem. The issue of sustainability, like I have said, anytime we are bringing a new program, has arisen its head, and it has always been dealt with. Indeed, I know that this government is trying to build a very solid bauxite industry. Our bauxite aluminium industry alone has the propensity to
generate
give
enough
us
revenue.
Some 460 billion US dollars. If you look at the 960 metric tons
of bauxite
we
have
we
it
have.
Yet.
It will come on
but
stream.
we're planning around with it.
It will come on stream. So when you are a government that wants to think outside of the box, you will begin to look at various sources of funding and not just the limited
stream,
ones
the oil
that
revenue
we have.
Taxes.
Like I have said, so many loopholes that this government has plucked. that are all raking in revenue, and that these revenues will be used to fund a lot of these things that we do not even need to go out to borrow. And and come and do the kind of things that we have. But in any case, if you look at my Mutala would know, if you look at enrollment for 2015 and enrollment for 2016, there was a reduction. Is that not it?
What is the figure?
From 17,000 to 15,000.
It's not true.
I'm coming.
Please,
now
let's make him land. I beg your pardon.
Today,
let's land. We can do the
enrollment has gone to 20,000. So there is no way that anyone can come and argue that we are disadvantaged because we are implementing quota system, because the allowances have been restored, and so on and so forth. For the NDC, it is a lofty idea. That is their understanding. Anything that is good for this country is a lofty idea. Free SHS is lofty. Don't do it. When obviously these programs are under threat, anytime the NDC gets the opportunity, unfortunately, get the opportunity to rule this country again, these programs will be under threat. But we think that for posterity, let's invest our money that God has given us through our natural resources in a very prudent manner that generations would benefit from. The president always says he thinks about the next generation, not the next elections, as we have seen people do in this country. He wants to leave a legacy that will ensure we are able to build a base in this country that will take us from poverty to posterity, and will continue to do that. We will not be moved by naysayers, doomsayers, people who refuse to think outside of the box and cannot do anything good except for stealing. We will not be drawn into such.
You're making a lot of unsubstantiated allegations. I'm afraid
Stephen,
there is your
in this
allegations
country
of
today,
stealing
in this
and
country
all of
today,
that.
in fact,
we
there
don't
was
have
high class robbery
concrete
in this country under John Dramani Mahama's presidency. That my good brother was
right.
High class.
Ghana has never seen,
even to the extent that their founder himself.
So Mr. Salam, I would entreat you. I will stick with what we can prove.
The founder said it, not me.
For it to be fair, for
the founder
us to give
of the
people
NDC,
who we cite
the founder
to respond.
President Gerald Rawlings is the one who said it, not me.
But let's
corruption
leave it out of,
is at its all-time high.
But
in this country,
stealing, thievery, and all of that.
But the kind of things we have seen around the agencies that people in the NDC man cannot be described in any way better than thievery. No any better word can be substituted for it. People deliberately, there was competition in thievery under NDC.
Can you give us a specific
from
example?
NCA to everywhere you go, Maslow, everywhere you go, it is there. It is there. Any institution you go,
well, I think it's fair
from
for
Cocoa Board, everywhere you see it.
If we cite thievery examples,
you understand.
For a law to take its course for people to
see.
be prosecuted. So please, let's focus on our discussion and leave out the narratives of thievery and stealing. I beg your pardon.
So
stay with
we are very convinced that the right way to go is to restore the allowances of these people and ensure that they are able to, some are able to go through school because of these allowances. That's how they are able to survive and pay their fees. Well, in a year today, they will make around 4,800 a year. Any student can pay for his school. That's how crucial these allowances were to most. Mutala, a lot of us, especially people from the north, largely went to school because of subsidized education. That's why I get very, very surprised. I went to Tamasco.
I didn't go to boarding school, so I never benefited that. If you catch
I went to Tamasco.
I didn't benefit that, but I'm from the north, and there were many
people understand.
Who didn't go to boarding school.
So I get surprised when people look at education with this level of contempt. that we should not find a way of supporting our people to educate and even try to move this country forward. I get absolutely surprised.
But Mr. Salem, the talk of sustainability is
like
fair.
I have said,
I mean, if we are spending that much, like Professor Jidonu put out the narrative, and for us to just work the maths, you will realize that we're looking at a lot of money to spend in that direction. So it's fair to ask where the money is going to come from.
You've Wyoming. If we had money in this country to brand buses, I don't see how we cannot find.
So what you're saying is that we have to cut back on corruption.
Dubious judgment debts. We found money for
so
that.
You cut back,
but we cannot find money to pay allowances. We cannot find money to fund free SHS. Then we have a problem in thinking. If that is true,
right?
But we are motivated by our conviction that we are doing the right thing. We can manage it.
And you can find the
like
funds.
I've said, if President Nkrumah stayed to the very day it was cancelled, it was done. How come one president got up and said it cannot be done? Then it was the lazy thinking that went into it. And that is why it has been reversed.
Right. Murtala Mohammed, let me get you to...
I'm surprised some of the statements he made. Now, you sit here, and I think this is, I don't know, is to say the least, an intellectual analysis being made. He's telling us that they admitted 20,000 this year. Were you listening to yourself? Please hold on. Enrollment 20,000, what are you talking about? You don't take first year, second year, and third year. When you are doing an intellectual analysis, I talked about the fact that 2016, 7,335 was admitted. We are talking about academic year admission. And 2017, it reduced to 5,335, a shortfall of almost 1,600. Now you come and you are telling us 20,000. Nursing training alone admitted 20,000. I think that the listeners will make their own conclusion.
We're trying to wrap up on this. Move to our next subject,
Steve,
I'd like you to
Steve, on a more serious note, all the issues we have raised, we are raising issues about the concerns that affect this country. And when
you enjoy allowances.
Yes, I did.
Today you are saying that people should
yes, I did. I enjoyed the allowances at the expense of several of my colleagues who could not gain admission into the same school. Hold on, I enjoyed those allowances. I enjoyed those allowances at the expense of several of my. Can I finish? I say I enjoyed those allowances at the expense of several of my colleagues who never had admissions because the school could not admit all of them. I had several colleagues who passed the SSSCE, who applied, but the the school took at a certain threshold because they could not admit all because of, can I finish? Because of the allowances. The intellectual analysis we are making, by the way, his 20,000 figure has been, it's funny. But let me say that we have raised this concerns repeatedly. Now he goes back to the history. Perhaps he wasn't listening to me. He was in a deep state of slumber. What I said, the reasons, the circumstances prevailing why Osajefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah introduced it. By your logic, if you are saying that it takes a lazy government, then perhaps Buzia, your government look up to him. I think the current president father was an integral part of that government. They withdrew that policy. I never knew that this is ready. But he's talking about corruption. Then he made mention of Maslow. You have statesman, you have my good friend Ibrahim Aji, who sat on Metro TV and said that Maslow bought tricycles, 600 tricycles at 17 million. You see the disingenuity of these people. 2,000 tricycles were ordered. They delivered 600 of the tricycles.
Right.
The 600 tricycles. Hold on. The 600 tricycles have not even been. Hold on. The 600 tricycles have not even been paid. Now you came to office. 600 tricycles which were not even paid. You are supposed to pay, and then they deliver the 1,400.
Right.
Then you went and said on TV and said,
we have
this,
to.
That is your character. I am saying that this government deliver. I am saying that you don't compromise the integrity of this country. You are going to deny the people of this country the services of 6,400 nurses by the time you leave office. This is incompetence. This is insensitive. This is recklessness.
Gentlemen, we have to move on the discussions. I'm afraid.
I enjoyed that.
I'm afraid this is NewDay, and you are obviously following the heated discussion. It's becoming an MPP and NDC thing. But this week also, one of the headlines that caught our attention was the allegations of money laundering, in which the Asantehene Otumfuo II was drawn into that allegation. And as of now, we still have not heard any statement from Menchia. The usual analysis we would have expected if this happened to any other person has been missing. Now, what happened is that a subordinate is alleged to have paid some £350,000 into a UK-based account belonging to Otumfuo II for onward transfer into a US account. Now, that subordinate, Mr. Arthur, is claiming that the International Commercial Bank wrongfully dismissed him, and the bank says he failed to follow anti-money laundering rules and had violated security policies as well. But the key issue is also that Otumfuo is said to have withdrawn that money from Ghana. So what kinds of regulations were in place at the point of withdrawal of the money from Ghana? Is it because we are ignoring money laundering protocols in favor of important people like that? So let me come to you, Professor Jidono. I'm sure you may have followed the discussion of the issue of money laundering and the fact also that Menchia has not issued any statement because perhaps rightly so, they have the feeling that the money legitimately belongs to Otumfuo and he can make a decision where to put it and where not to put it. For you, from where you stand with your expertise in IT and all of that, do you get the sense that this could have been avoided? This, Menchia might see this as an embarrassment, really. Could have been avoided?
Well, Stephen, we need to be quite clear what this issue is about. I think the king transferred the money, or the money was put in the account in August. Is that correct?
Yes.
And now we are now in October.
Yes.
We just heard about it. And the story was leaked by the Telegraph in the UK. And if it were any ordinary citizen who transferred that money, I don't think we would have heard this story. So the king being the king is an aspect of this story being publicized. That's the first point. The next point is I see the UK, since Osama bin Laden and his people escaped in September 11, and a lot of things that happened thereafter have put in place
rigid
banking system. Now in the UK, for you to move your own money from one place to another place, there are some people who watch and raise red flag. Raising a red flag doesn't mean that your money will be seized. They just want to know whether the money comes from a legitimate source and is being moved for a legitimate reason. Once those reasons are given, they let it go. Now let's get the fact clear. The money was given by the Otumfuo to MacArthur. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, MacArthur went to the Otumfuo's house to collect the money. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. You don't expect Otumfuo to travel to the city of London, okay, and queue up and pay this money. Bank people make arrangements to go to offices to collect money for deposit, because bank people, they love money. You see, when you have money for them, they'll come and collect it. If you cannot come, and deposit for you. MacArthur, I'm not sure this is the first time he made the king. He may have made the king before, because the impression I got is that he is he's a customer.
He's a customer.
He's a prestige customer of us, so we treat him with a lot of respect. So I went to his house. I don't think MacArthur also knew that when he goes there, the king is going to give him that amount of money to go and deposit. The king told him, look, I want to put this money in. He didn't say anything wrong with it. He can't say no to the king, so he took the money and took a taxi and went to his bank and deposited. Is that correct?
That's correct.
I don't
the bank
think
says he shouldn't have used a taxi.
Well, that's another matter. That's another part of the regulations that he must use an armored car. Okay, and we don't know the day he went there. He might have gone there on Saturday, or Sunday to see the king. Okay, see the king say, hey, young man, can you go and put this money in for me? Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong, because the bank goes to people's premises and collect money for deposit. Nothing wrong with that. And we all know that this money belongs to the king, or else he would not have the money with him. Okay, and there's nothing wrong with putting your money in a bank and asking a bank official, like a personal banker, to come and collect the money. Okay, and the king is quite acquainted to this process. Now the money is in a bank. Okay, the UK regulators check these things. Okay, they might say, well, you got this money and then you move it out to somewhere else. We have some problems with it. They will first consult the bank. Can you tell us whether you're taking care of the due diligence? Some few questions will be asked, okay? Probably the king will be asked questions, and in case he explain himself, then that will be the end of the matter. I'm sure that happened, because we don't know whether the money have been seized, because the money have not been seized. Is that correct?
No, the
money is very good. The transaction took place, which means that the UK regulators might have checked it and might not have seen anything wrong with it. Otherwise, the king might be asked for questioning, or the money might have been seized. Nothing of that happened that we knew about. So this is not about the illegality or the legality of transferring this money. It's about ATA taking the case to the tribunal for unlawful dismissal. That's what it's all about. Now, the Telegraph want to sensationalize this. As I say, if it's an ordinary citizen, okay, they will not have reported on MacArthur's tribunal case.
At all.
Yeah. It's not important.
Yeah.
Is it somebody generally speak this information and then link it to money laundering? So we're no more talking about MacArthur's claim of unlawful dismissal. We are making it to another African big issue. King. Where's the king now? Is the king still in London?
No, I'm not sure.
Is he back?
He's back.
Very good. The king has not been arrested. The transfer have taken place. We didn't hear from the UK regulator coming to make a statement publicly that money laundering have taken place. You see, when the regulators raise a flag, raising a flag doesn't mean that you have committed money. They say indicted. Very good. They want you to answer questions. Where did you get the money from? Well, I got it from here. What kind of business, line of business are you in? This is a line of business I'm in. Are you a person capable of raising that money? Yes. It's not unlawful to have that money on you anyway. So I think we didn't have all that we're not being told that the king, the UK regulators have accused the king of money laundering.
And Prof, do you get the impression that the inability of Menchia to issue out a formal response is actually also fueling speculation?
No, you see, if you know how the Marshall Palace works, you see, a king and their entourage, they don't issue statements by heart. Okay? For so far as they are concerned,
there's nothing
there are no issues, because we have cleared that already. Now, let's go to the Ghana International Bank. When the City of London regulators raise a red flag, if they did so, the first person they will talk to is the bank. We saw this money moving around. Can you tell us what is happening? The bank will answer questions. It is possible through that answer of questions, ATA was hauling and say, hey, you brought this money and you put it in, you flood regulations. Probably you should be the scapegoat. Now, if ATA had not brought this case to court, that would have been the end of the matter. So for me, this issue about unlawful dismissal. Now, where did ATA find the confidence to take the case to court? Because he thought that he'd be unlawfully dismissed. He didn't do anything wrong. He collected money, he put it in a bank, it had been sanctioned, the money have gone through, it have not been seized, no money laundering have taken place, but the City of London raised a red flag, and then I'm dismissed. And this is not right.
He said he was also dismissed for one of the things is failure to protect a whistleblower. He's arguing that he was dismissed. I reckon that he went through the process of informing the bank that he had put in this amount of money.
He did all that.
And it's from this kind of person and all of that.
Yes, he said all that. He couldn't have taken that money from the king of the Ashantis to the bank
without saying
anything to his boss. They know. Okay, so for me, it's not an issue that the king of the Ashantis have committed a money laundering offense. And it's an offense because the UK regulator never, ever issued that statement. It's just some newspaper who sensationalizes.
You say we should just ignore this.
Of course, yes. So I don't think, yes.
Don't put fire
yeah,
to it.
but the certain is this. But the certain is this. But the certain is this. The certain is this. Some damage have been caused.
A lot of damage, including allegations.
Very good. So
the king traveled on an expired diplomatic
yes, you see, some damage.
Yes, come out to apologize.
You see, so some damage have been caused. Seriously, some damage have been caused seriously. Not only to the king, to the nation Ghana. To your citizens who travel out and do all kind of things. Yes.
To take you from that.
Of course, yes. So I think it's very important that our people understand these dynamics, that the king has never been accused by the authorities of money laundering. This case was a case of unlawful dismissal of an employee
and we
of
should
the
let
bank.
it remain.
That is what it's all about.
Right. Professor Jidono, I'll take a comment from Mr. Janto Awon. We'll return from a break. This is still New Day. Please stay with us. The journalist is I'll show you. Welcome back. We're having a very interesting discussions at the background, but I have this message coming from Rabiu. Rabiu, you're saying that anytime you post comment, we don't read that comment. A lot of comments come through. It's never intentional to ignore some against others, but when we're going through all the lists, sometimes we can't read all. So Rabi, you're saying that, Mr. Host, please tell Murtala to stop educating the listeners of his incompetence and mismanagement of their so-called NDC government.
I guess that's
then
his messages haven't been
I know. Then
because with this message,
when will the government launch teacher training allowances be done, because teacher trainees are heavily populated than nurses? And when will NSS, National Service Personnel, will be paid? This is from Habieso Boate Mataheko Accra. And you are saying that anytime you post is never aired. But thank you very much for your comments. I won't have much time to read all the comments that come through. But we've been discussing the issue of Otumfuo being drawn into money laundering allegations. A critical issue we are all asking is whether he followed the right protocols. Professor Jidono thinks that he possibly may have followed the right protocols, and the matter ended, except for MacArthur going to court to challenge the reason for his dismissal. So, just like Prof is saying, should we just ignore this and see it as one of the usual media sensationalism, tabloid journalism?
I believe Prof has given a good rendition of the facts. And for me, the major thing about this particular story is process, and someone having a court case with regards to being sacked from the job. I don't see where Asantene comes in. I don't see.
And especially elements of the story which sought to trivialize who he was, working in the Bar of London.
By the way, why do you point a finger at Asantene? Does he receive a salary? Is he a salaried worker? He's not a salaried worker.
And he's not an elected official.
Obuasi, what do they call them?
Anglo
Gold Ashanti. Do they know how much money or his percentage in the gold that is extracted from Anglo Gold Ashanti? So if he decides that he wants to put money abroad somewhere, it is just a process.
And in any way, he has a luxurious
house
in London.
Over a million pounds. So even if you want to try and find who this person is and look at the background, the mere fact that he is an influential king, a monarch in a country, you cannot say that he's money laundered. If it so happens that the Queen decides to put money in Ghana Commercial Bank,
would that be money laundering?
Would that be money laundering?
The Queen of England?
Yes, I mean the Queen of England. There are certain people in the world who automatically when they do certain things, it's accepted. You cannot, paint them like any other person. If it so happened that, and it's only an example I'm giving, if it so happened, and I'll give two, that at the end of the tenure of President Mahama, we hear such a thing has happened, it will trigger. Questions will be asked. He was the president of Ghana, ex-president of Ghana. Where did this money come from? And in the UK today, when you put a certain amount of money in your bank account, it triggers. And they'll ask you. If it so happened that President Akufo-Addo today, something like this happened, it will trigger. They'll ask the questions. Their equivalent of BNI, MI5 or whatever, will come down and interview him. Can they come down and interview Asante to find out where he got the money from? So for me, that is neither here nor there. The Asante bit is out of the question. As you said, I believe it's an African, king. They want to create sensation. They have this notion that all Africans are corrupt, and they would like to paint it
with the same brush.
With the same brush. And for me, there's no case there. When Ghanaians heard it, nobody in their right mind
took it serious
that Asante was laundering money. The man himself has money. You enter his palace, you see that he has money. If for nothing at all, the Ashanti kingdom alone, the amounts of money, every land in Ashanti is owned by Asante Hene. Every land. So you put your house on it, after a certain duration of time, you've got to go back and renew your land title with him. And you have to pay money. So he's sitting down and money surrounds him. So if he wants to send some to the UK, and the gentleman said that when he was called to the house and was given the money, because of the reverence of His Majesty, he really couldn't, deny or stop it. So he sought advice from his manager, and everything went on well. So for me, it's a no case. I don't think we should even be thinking about it.
Right, Murtala Mohammed.
Well, let me see that
we should be wrapping up.
We need to understand who that journalist is, the one who published that story. This is a person who we are told has even done some work in Ghana. With who? We should be asking ourselves. My understanding is that he has a very close ties with Gabi Ochiridako. If it is true, then one wonder why he, knowing the reverend with which people hold the Asante Hene, such a publication could be done. And I'm saying that in this country, you had...
So does Gabi influence his work?
I don't know. I'm just asking questions. And I haven't said that, have I?
But that's what you're implying.
I said that
so
having...
we need to be wrapping up.
You
so
see,
we have 3 minutes.
There's a proverb that the aged always fear something. I won't even go to. But the point I'm making is that there's a publication that is being done. In this country, you had a higher commissioner who was more political than a diplomat, and who at a point said that you had ministers who were traveling in business classes. You remember?
He doesn't remember.
He said it publicly. The British High Commissioner, Benjamin, he said that he saw ministers traveling in business classes. When the Secretary of State, what's the name? Their foreign secretary in Britain, Boris Johnson was coming here. Why? Was he in business, in economic class, in the first class? He came here. You see, it has to do with the mindset. There isn't any evidence that Asante Hene took the money from Ghana. We haven't been told where the money was coming from. So the idea of money laundering, either in Ghana, is absolutely nonsense. We have no idea where the money was coming from. As to whether he got the money in England, which is possible, as to whether someone gave him the money, we do not know. We don't even have to go there. So this business of money laundering, which is being questioned for me, is absolutely nonsense. The other issue has to do with the diplomatic passport. What is wrong with Asante Hene having a diplomatic passport? In this country, we have pastors who have diplomatic passports.
And police escorts.
And in fact, police, good. If you have a wife who works at the foreign services, you are supposed to have a diplomatic passport. So it is not out of ordinary that the Asante Hene would have a diplomatic passport. And for me, I'm saying that the refusal or the silence of the Mancha police to respond, for me, is the best thing. They ought not to respond to things like that.
They don't have to add.
I am saying that if the Queen, the way they reverend the Queen in England, where you cannot discuss the Queen even in the British Parliament, you can't discuss the Queen even in the British Parliament, where the Queen has a significant role in determining who becomes the Prime Minister of Britain when they have elections and the elections is tied. Where they have that is the same way the Asante people, the Reverend
Asante. Murtala Mohammed,
So
our time is running up, so I'll take the discussion. I'll give you a closing comment, Mr. Salem. So all of the discussions we've been having, including the Asante Hine and all of that, what is the direction for your government?
This government is absolutely focused. We will ensure that we do right to the Ghanaian people per the mandates that they have given us. We are working assiduously to ensure that we expand our economy, to ensure that we are able to deliver on our promises and make sure that the Ghanaian people live in comfort.
With Delta Force.
If
you can't live in comfort and in safety.
Please, he's wrapping up. We have just about a minute to go.
Your warped logic, it is amazing. You just are saying that if a journalist is friends with Gabi, and I don't know whether the journalist sleeps in the same house as Gabi, or when the journalist is going to write story, he comes to what he's saying to consult Gabi before writing. Such logic, I am yet to see that established. So, indeed, we are resolute, we are focused, and we are delivering to
that you cut back on corruption, invest the money into relevant areas.
We are doing so. If you look at the mandates we are giving in restoring allowances to the nurses out there.
Saturday edition. Thank you very much, Professor.
The same
Mr. Kwame Jantua and Mustafa Salem and Murtala Mohammed. Thank you very much for all of you who listened to us on radio and watched us around the world. I'm Stephen Enti. Thank you very much and have a great weekend.